Hi, everybody. I'm Walden Hughes. On the line is a gentleman who we've been honored to have on the show a few years ago, and it's always good to have somebody back. James Drury, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be back.
I was looking at your credits, and the thing that caught my eye is a play that you did. I knew a lot of guys who did this play in New York, Life with Father. And
Yes.
I was wondering, I know Ben Cooper and Don Hastings and Hal Stone all did it before you, but I was wondering what some of your memories of that play are.
Well, they're kind of dim. Because before I was very well trained as an actor, I was just working as one of the kids,
Mm-hmm.
and it was early experience. I was very excited about being on the stage. This wasn't on Broadway. This is off Broadway, but I was very excited about being on the stage with these other actors and putting a play together and seeing how it went together, But I was basically not very far along in my studies. I started acting really when I was 8 years old in a biblical play for children in New York City at the Greenwich Settlement House. And it was a children's theater group that did plays, topical plays like Christmas plays and so forth. And this was a play about the Christ child and King Herod. And I played King Herod. And they put the long flowing beard on me and the crepe hair beard and the long flowing robes.
Yeah.
And I rented and raved around the stage there, and I hit my marks and I said my words, and at the end the people clapped, and I figured, well, if they're going to clap at this, I'd better find out more about it. So I immediately made it a lifelong journey and study of the things that go into the profession of acting, and I studied it through junior high and high school and majored in it at NYU, and I went to college, and I came to California for a vacation after my junior year at NYU, and in 7 days I got a 7-year contract at MGM.
Wow.
So I never went back and finished my senior year of college, but it was kind of a Cinderella story. I got to California, and they called me from MGM. They had auditioned me in New York, and I didn't think the guy was very interested in the audition because he was having his shoes shine throughout the time we were auditioning, but apparently he was impressed. And so he sent a note to the coach to look this guy up, and they did, and they signed me to a contract. And I did 7 pictures when I was there that 1 year, and at the end of the year, they dropped me. I was hooked up for 7 years, but they could get rid of me at the end of any 1 year. So they like a lot of people, I was under contract, and I wasn't under contract.
Right.
And shortly thereafter, I got a contract at Fox, 26 at Fox, and I was there for 3 years, and I did 3 pictures there. But the first 7 pictures, I think I had about a total of 12 lines in the whole seven pictures together. So you can see that I was playing very, very small parts, learning the motion picture technique. I'd been working on the stage, and everything I was doing was very broad, and all the gestures are broad.
Right.
And you're trying to perform on the stage, and when you get to film, why it must be greatly reduced in your movements, the size of the volume of your voice, the size of your facial expressions, and all of that has to be brought down to a kind of a minute scale, because when you raise your eyebrow in 70 millimeter Panavision, it goes up 18 feet. So, you have to be careful with what you're doing. And they finally did a screen test of me at MGM, and I don't have that film, but I wish I did. It was a scene from Montgomery Clift's scene from Here with Eternity.
Oh, wow.
And I did the scene, and it's terrible. It's horrendous. I'm ranting and raving around the stage there and throwing my arms around. And, it's totally inappropriate for motion pictures, but you have to learn somehow.
Yeah.
And I learned from that, and I learned from every piece of film I did, and then I began to reduce my expressions and get it down to where it was believable. And acting, by definition, is the creation of the illusion of reality. We have to make people believe that what they're seeing is actually happening, and that's hard to do in film if you're trying to use stage technique. So that transition was quite important and quite actually easy for me once I got the idea of what was going on. But it took a while to get that through my head.
In New York, did you do any radio at all? Did you do any shows in college or any radio as a kid?
Not as a kid, no. As an adult, I took over a radio talk show in L.A. for a week one time from a guy that had to have an operation or something. And this was just a general talk show on all kinds of topics, and I had a ball doing it. But that was, that doesn't qualify as acting. That was me as a personality appearing with other people on the radio and talking about a variety of topics from politics.
Was that KABC? What station was that? And that you did?
I can't remember what station it was. It was a local LA station, though.
Yeah.
And we did it for a week, and then the guy came back, and I never did any other radio that I know of. But a lot of guys had started out in radio and did a lot of radio plays. I never was. The timing was not right for me to do that. By the time I got to Hollywood, that was pretty much over.
Yeah, it was done.
So,
in 1954, MGM, was the studio system still in place, or was it pretty much gone? We hear about the studio system in the 30s and 40s, but I'm thinking time you got there, it would probably downsize a great deal.
No, it was still in force in 54 because they must have had 50, 60 people under contract, trying to groom them to become stars in films, and some of them made it and some of them did it. When I was there, Roger Moore was there,
right?
And I'm trying to think of who else was on deck. A whole bunch of people. Bob Dix, who was Richard Dix's son, and my dear friend who just passed away. He was there. We did Forbidden Planet together. We were the two guys that were killed by the invisible monster in Forbidden Planet, which, as you know, was probably the first true science fiction film that had ever been made. It was the first big-time science fiction film, let's put it that way. And it was very, very advanced for its time, and became the granddaddy of all these Star Treks and all the others, that came down the pipe. But it still holds up. I watched it the other day, and it's a good film, and does great tribute to that genre. So I was proud to be involved with that.
Were you still taking classes when you were out here under contract at MGM or 20th Century? Were you still taking classes, or was it pretty much work?
We had classes that we were asked to attend, and I did attend a lot of them. And then at 20th Century Fox, they had quite a extensive acting class system, and we were very active in that when we weren't working on something else. And at Fox, I only did three pictures in the 3 years I was there, but they were significant. I played Elvis Presley's brother, one of his older brothers, in his first picture, which was Love Me Tender.
Right.
And then I played Pat Boone's older brother in his first picture, which was Bernadine. And I did one other Western called The Last Wagon, and with Richard Woodmark. And I played a cavalry officer in that. But then Fox dropped me, and I freelanced and did all the episodic television I could. And then I was signed to a contract by Goodson Todman to do a pilot for a show called The Yank. It was a spinoff of The Rebel, and it was about a northern doctor that returned to the South after the Civil War. And as Lincoln said in the second inaugural, we must bind up the nation's wounds. And he went back to do that because most of the doctors in the South were killed in the war. There were very few doctors left. So he went back to minister to the sick in that. And it was a very good pilot, but that was the year that the network went from half-hour shows to hour shows, and in the Western field, and they never could sell a pilot. So then I was freelancing again, and I signed a contract with Columbia Pictures to do a show called The Virginian, and it was a half-hour version of The Virginian with a whole different take on the character. He was kind of a Southern fop with lace front shirt and lace cuffs on his sticking out of his jacket, and the polished boots on the outside of his pants. He looked like somebody out of Jeb Stuart's cavalry when they were on parade, so it was a whole different take on it. And they couldn't sell that one either because it was a half-hour deal, which was very fortunate because if they had sold it, then I would have destroyed the credibility or the viability of the 90-minute version of the Virginian, which was a very, very ambitious undertaking. No one had ever done a 90-minute show before with continuing characters. We had Playhouse 90 and Hallmark Hall of Fame and so forth that were 90 minutes long, but they were just with an all-star cast, and then they do another one. They do a different cast. Well, in this one, we decided to have the continuing cast go from week to week and do a dramatic Western. It was 90 minutes long, and it actually logistically cannot be done, but we did it anyway. So it was, sometimes I was, one day I appeared in as many as 5 episodes of The Virginian in one day.
Wow.
Because we had to keep multiple units working to meet our air dates. We'd shoot one in 8 days, and we ran out of them every 5 days. So we were constantly trying to double up, and that's why some of the shows you'll see on the Virginian I barely appear in, and then others I'm very, very prominent in. So, it's just whatever we could work out logistically to make it all work. And I ride my horse from one set to the other and go from one script to the other. So that was a very interesting day, get that all done and get it through. But it was a joy to do it, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I'm glad we did it. No one's ever done it since. So I think it was kind of a unique accomplishment.
You became a historian about Western. Did you read? Did you study the time? That way you sort of know how the character should be, or how did you prepare for the role?
Well, my maternal grandfather, and his name John Hezekiah Crawford, and he came west with a wagon train in sometime like 1870 or 1875, and settled in Oregon. And he when I was growing up, most of the time I was in Oregon with my mother, and my dad was in New York teaching at NYU, and then he'd come west for Christmas and Easter, and then be there all summer because he was a college professor at NYU. So And most of the time, most of the character traits that you see in a Virginian were based on my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. I never knew my paternal grandfather. He died before I was born.
Right.
But my maternal grandfather, John Crawford, was a rancher and a farmer, and came from a long tradition of Kentucky long rifles. He was born in Kentucky and raised in Missouri, and as I say, came west, and he didn't have any Indian fights, but he knew people that had the Indian fights, and he told me all the stories of the Old West and of the wagon train and all of that when I was just a toddler. And as I grew up, he put me on my first horse when I was in diapers. He had a team of Belgian plow horses, and he put me up there just to sit me up there, and I wouldn't come down all day. I loved it. I loved the smell of it and the sweat of it and the dust of it and the feel of the horse under me. And I've been crazy about horses ever since. And he taught me to shoot and taught me to handle a Winchester, and he just taught me all about woodcraft and how to get along in the wild, and how to dynamite a stump and how to do all kinds of stuff. So I had all that in my background when I took the role, and I've been riding infestations. I was in diapers, so that was a natural for me, and I've been also been around cattle and cattle ranching quite a bit. So I came into it with a lot of skills that you wouldn't expect an actor to have, but I had them. So I was able to capitalize on that and use that. So I'm very grateful to my grandfather for what he was able to teach me, because I used it every day on the Virginian.
Well, did it help that you had a film, you worked in movies before the Virginian? I mean, the techniques, did any of those techniques transfer over from film to TV?
Oh, it's the same thing. Exactly. It's not. There's no difference. In television and motion picture acting is exactly the same. It's all the screen captures your movement so readily that you have to be very careful of how broad you are in the form of your expression. No matter what you're saying or doing, you have to keep it way reduced in size for film as opposed to the stage. There's a big difference between stage acting and film acting, but no difference between film acting and television acting, because that's all film.
In the day that you did 5 different episodes you're working on in the Virginian, how did you make sure you had your lines straight? Was there a technique that you made sure that...
I'm very gifted in one way, in that I have a absolute photographic memory for dialogue. I can't remember my own phone number half the time, but I can remember dialogue from plays that I did 60 years ago that I'd rather forget, So all those lines are still there in my head. And the reason for that is that I don't learn my lines. I learn the play. I learn the play from the first word to the last word. I don't know everybody's lines. And that way, if I'm in a scene and something goes wrong, I may be able to get us out of it.
Right.
And if I can't, I can't. But at least I'm prepared, and I know where every line in the play is supposed to go. So that gave me a big leg up on a lot of people, because I could go in and look at the script for a moment and realize what episode I was in and what story we were telling, and assume those characteristics, and step on stage and do my lines for that show and jump back on the horse and ride over to the other set. So that's how that worked.
How much flexibility did you have with dialogue? If you were doing that many, as long as you could tell the story, the gist of the story, were they concerned about having the wording just correct, or did they give you the freedom to substitute words or whatever to make sure at least you would tell the story the way it should be?
Well, generally speaking, actors and actresses have pretty fair amount of flexibility when you're rehearsing the scene. You know, when you're going through it for the first, second, and third time,
right,
before you start filming, and you come to a place where you agree on what you want to agree on and the changes, and if you've made changes, you make them permanent, and then you memorize those, or you just assimilate those, and then you have, from there on out, you'd have to do the same words, same dialogue. Otherwise, you couldn't cut it together. You couldn't match the scenes, because you'd be saying something in a close-up that you weren't saying in a long shot. So you have to the dialogue has to be the same in every take on any scene in a film, but you can be flexible when you're rehearsing it. When you're working with it and trying to get it down, then you can be flexible. But when you've decided on the changes, you have to keep them. You know, you have to be consistent with them, because otherwise the film will not. You couldn't edit it, so that it would be recognizable. You understand?
Yes, I sure do. Were you surprised that it ran 9 years? Were you not surprised about the length of the run?
I really, I was amazed every year that we were renewed, that we were going to go and do it another year, and I was just terribly grateful that we were doing it. And I was more surprised, really, when we went off the air than I was that we stayed on the air. But because we had a good show, and it was, people were enjoying it very much. We were never out of the top 20, but then they changed the name in the 9th season to the Men from Shiloh, and changed the format, so there were going to be 4 stars: Doug McClure, myself, and Stuart Granger, and Lee Majors. And we were all supposed to do 4 shows or something like that. I think I did 8, and Doug did 6, and I don't know what those other guys did. So anyway, the change seemed like a good idea to freshen up the show. Everybody signed off on it, including me, and it didn't work. People were looking for the Virginian when they saw the Men from Shiloh. They didn't know what it was, and they didn't watch it. So it became it went off the air.
Yeah.
But that's the way these things go, you know. Everything has a life cycle, and that was ours.
So during the summer, did you do stage work during the Virginian, or was it pretty much just the time you had downtime you spent with your family? How did you manage your career?
Well, we had very little time off. We might have 6 weeks off altogether in the course of the year. And if I could do a play, I would go do a play. But most of the time, I was involved at the studio doing something else. They'd have me guest starring in some other television series. I know that Doug and I were both in the pilot of Robert Wagner's To Catch a Thief.
Right.
And we did things like that, and basically try to get some rest and maybe go on a trip or two out of town, and then it was time to start filming again. That's the way it went with that. But as soon as the Virginian was over, I went back on the stage, primarily in dinner theater around the country. I was in great demand because of the popularity of the show. And for 7 years, I did theater pretty much 45, 50 weeks out of the year. And then that part of the theater dried up. All those dinner theaters closed because of poor management. And, and basically those dinner theaters were run by food and beverage people, and they knew nothing about the theater.
No.
And at the beginning, they'd get good actors in there and good shows, and then serve good food, and it was all very successful. And then they started deciding they could do better if they hired cheaper actors. So they hired cheaper actors and actresses, got them for peanuts, and these people didn't really know that much about what they were doing. And so the plays became, the quality of the plays dropped off precipitously. And so they said, well, we're not making any money. We better cut back on the quality of the food. So what you had was an audience that comes to the theater and they see a lousy play and get a lousy meal.
Yep.
And guess what? They don't come back.
Yep.
So that's how they went out of business. So that dried up for me, and I did one other series called Firehouse for ABC. We did 13 shows, and it was really a terrible, trivial little show. I look at the show that's on now called Chicago Fire, and I have a friend, Annie Lockhart, who does the announcing, or she plays the PR announcer on the fire, in the fire company. You know, she announces when they go out and where they go and so forth. And I was telling her the other day that these guys in that show are doing a magnificent job, but they have time. They have an hour show, and they can develop characters, and they have a family you can root for there in the firehouse, and all those things. We had 3 disasters in 21 minutes, and when you have 3 disasters in 21 minutes, you never get to know the people.
No.
It's just a bunch of tiny little firemen running around putting out great big fires. So that was the story of that. It didn't go anywhere, and I was glad it was over because it was just a terrible, it was a dreadful show. So
when you were doing dinner theater, did you have a favorite play in that 7-year run that you really loved to do? Was there one particular?
Well, I loved them all. I did a lot of Neil Simon. I did Prisoner of Second Avenue, and we did California Suite. I did that on the road with Carolyn Jones on a Best of Truck tour out of New York, and I just kept busy doing those kinds of things. I loved the Rainmaker. I played the Rainmaker for many years and did various venues, and those were 2 of my favorites, but I did a variety of all kinds of things, whatever the audience called for and the producers called for, I would do. So,
you have a website. Are there things up there when people go to your website? Can they order items from you? Or
all kinds of autographed pictures and merchandise. We have coffee cups and T-shirts and cookbooks and calendars and all kinds of things. And it's been very, very successful. A lady up in London, Ohio runs that for me. And she's done a great job. Karen Lindsay has done a great job. And she arranges most of our personal appearances now. By the way, I don't know when this is going to play, but our next engagement that we think we can keep is going to be in San Angelo, Texas. And that'll be the last couple of days of April and the first 2 or 3 days of May. I'm not exactly sure about the actual dates, but you can look them up on the website, thevirginian.net. You can go there and find out all about the schedule. But that, of course, is dependent upon what's happening with the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And we just canceled I was supposed to go to the big Tulsa Gun Show the 1st of April, and that's been canceled. So,
everything's up for grabs. I'm having the same issue. I'm rescheduling the event that I was going to produce just because we just don't know. And
we don't know when it's going to peak and when it's going to diminish and where it's going to go and how long it's going to be here.
That's true. That is so true.
Everything's up in the air right now. I'm also supposed to go to Tunica, Mississippi for the Great Southeast Film Festival, and that's in June sometime.
Right.
And that may be canceled. So we don't know about that yet.
Time will tell. So for the audience, just check on James' website. That's probably the best way to know when the event he's going to be there. That way you can come.
That's correct, and then it'll be up to date every day. So if there is a cancellation, you'll know about it in plenty of time.
You bet.
So that you don't make it unnecessary trip. And nobody needs to be making any unnecessary trips.
No.
During this coronavirus, anyway, you can just stay stay in place and stay away from other people if you can.
You can stay home and watch the Virginian on TV.
That's what I've been doing. In fact, I just watched one today with Doug McClure, and Bill Shatner. So that's it's good. We're on the Inspiration Channel from 11 till 2 every day.
How about that?
5 days a week, so that's 2 shows every day, and sometimes they have a third show at 8 o'clock at night.
Right.
So it's we're getting a lot of exposure and a lot of people writing in about it, which is very, very gratifying, particularly when the young people write.
You bet.
You know, I've got grandkids that are writing and saying they enjoy the show, so that really pleases me because there's really no place they can get that kind of information on television today without it being a rerun of some sort. So.
Well, James, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I really appreciate it. And
my pleasure, and I enjoyed talking to you. And I hope you don't wait 18 years to ask me.
I hope not either. All right, James, you have a wonderful afternoon.
Same to you.
You
and
too.
We'll see you again.
You
Bye-bye
bet.
now.
Bye-bye.